welcome to the Comics Fu Show.
I'm your co-host, Patrick Lugo, and with me is co-host Curtis Fujita.
As a kid, I loved Kung Fu movies, so I went to Chinatown, trained with a wise teacher, and became a Kung Fu master. Sounds simple, right? Not really. My journey, like the study of Kung Fu, was as arduous as it was rewarding, filled with as many secrets as revelations and as much heartache as triumph. It's a defining moment in my life, and while I began studying Kung Fu to learn how to fight, what I discovered was a way to live. Martial arts never came easy to me. I was far from talented, and even farther from being the chosen one. It was only through years of tenacious perseverance that I was able to make steady progress. And so, I was surprised when my master told me that I should teach Kung Fu and share the art outside of Chinatown. I did just that and taught Kung Fu to my own students for 20 years. I always wanted to do more to share the art of Kung Fu with others, but was limited by only being able to teach those within my immediate area. What about the rest of the world? Then one day, I had one of the deepest insights about Kung Fu. I realized that the punches, kicks, throws, and myriad of martial maneuvers are merely the delivery system for the true essence of Kung Fu, the philosophy and way of life. Having worked for years as a professional artist and storyteller in film, animation, video games, and comic books, I realized that I could draw upon this unique skill set to share my passion for Kung Fu with the greater world. And so I created Shadow Ghost, a Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. The first issue is created entirely by myself, from story and art to colors and lettering. Every panel is filled with unprecedented accuracy in its depiction of Kung Fu by a comic book creator who knows from first-hand experience what it means to be a Kung Fu master. Shadow Ghost is a martial arts coming-of-age story about a young man whose search for the truth about a legendary hero leads him to study Kung Fu, and through a twist of fate becomes part of the legend himself. For the first time in comic book history, you can immerse yourself further in each issue with Kung Fu skills technology, powered by Tiger Crane Kung Fu. Scan the QR code at the back of the comic and follow an exclusive link to an online instructional video where I teach you Kung Fu techniques featured in this series. With Kung Fu skills technology, you can do more than just read about the Shadow Ghost saga. You can become a part of it. The first issue is completely finished and ready for print. All that's needed is for you to make a pledge of support so that we can fund the printing of the first issue. Together, we can share the wisdom of Kung Fu with the greater world. Shadow Ghost is the story of Kung Fu. It's about the people, the art, the culture, and the philosophy. It's my story and the story of those that I've learned from, taught, fought, and loved. Join me and become part of the vibrant legacy in a place and time where we might not be the chosen one, but where we can make a choice to be part of something bigger and greater than just ourselves. I'm Sifu Curtis Fujita, and this is Shadow Ghost, the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master.
Tigers and dragons and martial artists and monsters. So when I launched the campaign for A Tiger's Tale Volume 1, I did not know what to expect, but it succeeded thanks to Hi, I'm Plugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and the art director for Kung Fu Magazine for more than 20 years. But I'm here to talk to you about a project that's really special to me. It's the middle grade graphic novel, A Tiger's Tale. Imagine the story of tigers and dragons and martial artists and monsters. So when I launched the campaign for A Tiger's Tale Volume 1, I did not know what to expect, but it succeeded thanks to a group of passionate backers. It was also awarded the Make More Comics art grant that year and was later featured as part of an art gallery exhibit. And that's why I'm coming to Kickstarter, to cover production fees, printing, copy editing, things like that. Books completed, with the exception of a few pages I've set aside for color over the course of the campaign. This turned out to be a popular feature of Volume 1's campaign, so I thought I'd bring it back for Volume 2. I think it's going to be great fun for everyone. Hope you'll support the campaign. I'm very excited about it. Thanks for stopping by.
As a kid, I loved Kung Fu movies. So I went to Chinatown, trained with a wise teacher, and became a Kung Fu master. Sounds simple, right? Not really. My journey, like the study of Kung Fu, was as arduous as it was rewarding, filled with as many secrets as revelations and as much heartache as triumph. It's a defining moment in my life, and while I began studying Kung Fu to learn how to fight, what I discovered was a way to live. Martial arts never came easy to me. I was far from talented, and even farther from being the chosen one. It was only through years of tenacious perseverance that I was able to make steady progress. And so, I was surprised when my master told me that I should teach Kung Fu and share the art outside of Chinatown. I did just that and taught Kung Fu to my own students for 20 years. I always wanted to do more to share the art of Kung Fu with others, but was limited by only being able to teach those within my immediate area. What about the rest of the world? Then one day, I had one of the deepest insights about Kung Fu. I realized that the punches, kicks, throws, and myriad of martial maneuvers are merely the delivery system for the true essence of Kung Fu, the philosophy and way of life. Having worked for years as a professional artist and storyteller in film, animation, video games, and comic books, I realized that I could draw upon this unique skill set to share my passion for Kung Fu with the greater world. And so I created Shadow Ghost, a Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. The first issue is created entirely by myself, from story and art to colors and lettering. Every panel is filled with unprecedented accuracy in its depiction of Kung Fu by a comic book creator who knows from first-hand experience what it means to be a Kung Fu master. Shadow Ghost is a martial arts coming-of-age story about a young man whose search for the truth about a legendary hero leads him to study Kung Fu, and through a twist of fate becomes part of the legend himself. For the first time in comic book history, you can immerse yourself further in each issue with Kung Fu skills technology, powered by Tiger Crane Kung Fu. Scan the QR code at the back of the comic and follow an exclusive link to an online instructional video where I teach you Kung Fu techniques featured in the series. With Kung Fu skills technology, you can do more than just read about the Shadow Ghost saga. You can become a part of it. The first issue is completely finished and ready for print. All that's needed is for you to make a pledge of support so that we can fund the printing of the first issue. Together, we can share the wisdom of Kung Fu with the greater world. Shadow Ghost is the story of Kung Fu. It's about the people, the art, the culture, and the philosophy. It's my story and the story of those that I've learned from, taught, fought, and loved. Join me and become part of the vibrant legacy in a place and time where we might not be the chosen one, but where we can make a choice to be part of something bigger and greater than just ourselves. I'm Sifu Curtis Fujita, and this is Shadow Ghost, the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. All right, hello. Welcome to the Comics Fu Show,
where we stand at the intersection of Kung Fu, comics, and pop culture in all its forms.
Excellent. And as always, we'll introduce ourselves before introducing our guests. I'm Curtis Fujita, Kung Fu instructor, comic book creator. My current Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign is for my comic book Shadow Ghost, the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. And next is Patrick. Patrick, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Curtis, welcome back to a special Wudang Wednesday broadcast of the Comics Fu Show. We've departed from our usual Tuesday and Sunday streams for a lot of really good reasons.
Definitely.
But that said, I'm Patrick Lugo. Oh, wait, there it is. I'll get that eventually. Online as Plugo, author, illustrator, comic creator. My current project is the Kickstarter campaign for A Tiger's Tale Volumes 1 and 2, which we just shared the videos for.
Excellent. And without further ado, we got some awesome, amazing guests. I'm very happy to know them personally, but they're also just phenomenal artists and creators, all in the world of animation. So we're going to go around. We'll just do it by alphabetically. So that's the easiest way to do it, because they're all our priority in my mind. So the first one we're going to have coming is supervising producer of Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, Michael Chang. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
Welcome, Michael. I just want you to envision waves of applause. Just
it's happening online right now. It's happening online. And next up is director and storyboard artist at Lex and Otis, Tim Divar. Welcome, Tim. And
welcome, Tim.
You might be muted. There you go.
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
All right. Awesome. And last but definitely not least, he's the art director at Avatar Studios, William Niu. Welcome, William.
Hi, guys.
Welcome,
Thanks so much for having me. Awesome trailers. I was like smiling so much in the backstage as watching.
I appreciate that. Well, welcome, guys. It's so good to have you on the show. I know all of you, personally, but this is Patrick. Patrick's first time getting to meet everybody. So,
great to meet you. I tell you, the enthusiasm for this conversation has gotten me through a really long day, and so I'm just, forgive me if I start stumbling over my words, but I'm looking forward to a fun evening. Fun episode of the Comics Fu Show after dark,
Exactly. Where there are no rules.
There are no rules.
Go anywhere. That being said, I figure, since we have all three of you, we just kind of go around and kind of ask all of you the same questions, and we'll just kind of riff and go whichever way we go. But I thought maybe we'd start with, essentially, all of you are, involved in animation. What was kind of your entry point to that? Some of you had done other things in the art world before. So, maybe we'll just go around. Maybe we'll start with Michael. Maybe you could give kind of a brief history about your career in art and how it led you into animation.
I went to Northern Illinois University for illustration, and after graduating, I moved to California and got a job in comics at Image when the bubble burst, kind of. So I was like a year in comics and didn't make much money. And then a lot of my peers at the studio went into animation, and I kind of followed along and just kind of learned at Sony, and that's where I met Tim. And we worked together for many years on many different projects, and then just from there, just moving from studio to studio and getting to know people, learning the process. That's kind of the quick and dirty origin story, I guess.
Nice. Well, since you mentioned him, maybe it would be Tim would be next. So Tim, why don't, of course I know, but maybe you can tell everybody a little bit about your background, where you started out, how that brought you into animation to where you are at now.
Yeah, I was always a fan of animation and comics. Growing up in high school, in Ohio, I went to Columbus College of Art and Design for a few years, and then I took a break. And I meant to go back, but I was at the time submitted portfolios to try to get into comic books, and I happened to get a gig at Malibu Comics, and I kind of got accepted to do both some fill-in comic work and also some color guiding work. And when I accepted, that's when I met Curtis. Curtis was there at the time too. So yeah, I know Curtis from way back. And then after just a few years in comics, a good friend gave us a tip about some art, some background art gigs in Classy Chupo, which is a studio that does Duckman. And I tried out there, and then I got a gig doing background art for a while. And then after that, I decided to do some storyboarding. And then that's when I transitioned over to Sony. It was right around the time they were doing like Jumanji, Project Geeker, and then later on Ghostbusters. And those were some of my first earlier gigs in storyboarding. And that's where I met Michael Chang. And then like years and years later, we kind of all been bouncing from studio to studio, working on various projects. And but we kept in touch, and we still kind of bump into each other on the same projects every now and then. But yeah.
Great, excellent. And then, William, how about yourself? How did it all start for you, and how did you find your way into this career?
Oh, it's everybody has different entry story to animation industry. For mine, I went to an art school in Maryland called MICA, and I was studying illustration and animation. And I've always really liked animation, both 2D and 3D. And I grew up watching anime and playing video games. So a lot of my backgrounds were already kind of lining up with the stuff that I'm seeing on the TV that I've always kind of had the dream of wanting to be part of that. And so during school, I was applying for these like apprenticeship at Nickelodeon, and I was applying for a lot of places, and not all of them stuck, but the one thing that did stick was this apprenticeship thing with Nickelodeon. And I actually didn't end up getting it, but because I got to go to Nickelodeon, I was like flying from Maryland to California at the time for this like round of interviews, like because they have to like interview people and make sure that you're part of, you're the appropriate people for our apprenticeship. So I was down to the last 4 people, and I didn't get it, but the people who interviewed me happens to be my first bosses, Mike and Brian, who ended up hiring me for my first job at Legend of Korra. And I'm so thankful and so happy to have worked on that team, because I learned like just so much about anything art related. And this was also my entry point to animation. It kind of set a lot of expectations on, what it's like, and how much effort it takes to make an animation. I kind of learned a lot about teamwork and just artistic spirit, if you want to call it that, through working that experience. And over time, I was like starting off like thinking like, I'm gonna get fired and I don't know what to do. But then over time, I got a little better and more confident. And then throughout the time in animation, I've got to meet people like Mike and Tim and a bunch of awesome, amazing people in animation. And I'm like every day, or not every day, but like every time I meet people, I discover like, oh, so-and-so knows other people, and the industry gets smaller and smaller. And, like I met you, Curtis, through playing video games with these guys, and it just keeps getting smaller. So yeah, it's a really fun industry, and it's full of passionate and kind people. And I'm just really glad to be here.
No, awesome. Just to kind of run it back just a bit, I'm curious. So you didn't get the internship, but then they hired you. Was it that in the same sentence? Was like, okay, we can't get you for the internship, but we'd like to hire you? Or was it like a month passed? I'm just curious about that point in time. How did that kind of come together?
It was just a timing thing. I think for this specific program, they were looking for mentorships, but then different productions needed to hire people too. And so because I was not selected for this mentorship, I was available. And then a production needed someone available, and I happened to, meet some of the things they're looking for, thankfully. And yeah, sometimes things just line up, and again, everybody has very different stories as far as getting into animation industries goes, and that's always a really good the first question to ask for anyone in animation, because I'm sure everyone has different stories.
Definitely. Now, did all three of you? Because I've heard Voltron kicked around when we've talked, but did all three of you ever work on the same project at the same time, or was it that you all worked together at different points in time? Or I'm curious about that.
Not three of us at the same
Not all
time.
three.
Not three at the same time, but yeah, I've worked. Both of them have worked at Lex and Otis. I've worked with Tim on a bunch of Sony shows and Warner Brothers shows, and then I've worked with Will on Voltron and Turtle, 2012 Turtles for a little bit.
Nice, very cool.
So I have a question. Like Tim, you mentioned, and we're talking about like bouncing around between studios, but I imagine that there's this image of like the black and white, probably a black and white image of like the Disney studios. Everyone goes to work in one place, and that's just what they do for the rest of their life. You know, that's what working in animation is. And I think that's probably not what reality is. So I was wondering if you could, give a little 5-minute history of like how animation has evolved from when you first were like imagining what it was like to be in animation.
Real quick, hey Pops Van Sanchez stopped by. Thank you, Pops. Pops is like linchpin in our independent comic book community movement. So thanks for swinging by, Pops. And anybody watching, if especially some of your friends of these guys, feel free to chime in. So sorry, Tim, go ahead, please.
Oh, I guess I'll take a stab at the question. When I was coming from comic books, I really didn't know. I had the same impression too, that like, you kind of like once you got to a studio, you stayed there for quite a while until you felt like you wanted to try something else. But when I first got in, I definitely moved around a lot from show to show. But it's actually a mix. I think different people will have different experiences. There's some people that will get in and they might actually be at one studio for, maybe, they can be there from like 6 to 8 years before they actually have to move on, depending if that studio has just a regular flow of shows to work on. So bigger studios like maybe Disney, you might be there for quite some time, or you happen to get in on features, and features have a longer schedule. So you just kind of move from feature to feature to feature. So you're at that same studio for a really long time. But for TV shows, if you get in on a studio that just has only 1 or 2 TV shows active at the moment or in production, you might only work for like a season or about a year before like you're done, and then you're kind of like you have to kind of go look for another gig. Sometimes you get lucky and that gig is actually in the same studio because maybe on the other side of the building they're starting another show, or sometimes it's just you have to go out and hit the pavement and look at who else is starting a show at the time. So it's for me, it's been a mixed. In the beginning, I was at Sony for maybe, let's say 3 or 4 years. And then after that, I was at Mike Young Productions on He-Man. And then I went to Warner Brothers, then went to Cartoon Network, and then back to Warner Brothers. So I was actually skipping shows a lot. But then toward the last, I want to say like 2008 to 2019, I was just all Warner Brothers. So that was like the longest stint at one place I've been. So like I said, it can kind of come and go, you know what I mean? And some people will do it based on kind of like the things they seek out, the kind of shows. Some people like comedy, so they feel comfortable there, so they'll always look for comedy shows. And some other people will go, well, I feel like I want to take a break, and they actually might change genres. So they'll actually actively go out to change the type of shows they work on, just so they can get some, something new, a new experience, and learn something new. So it's a little different per artist.
Sure, and we have somebody in the chat. I'm gonna paraphrase what he's saying because I think our fellow guests will know what he's saying. But Linnell's in the chat. He says, "What's up, fellas?" The vernacular is a little different, but we got you, Linnell. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Linnell, another esteemed member of the animation community and video game community. So no, that's what I found so fascinating. I mean, as if it's not competitive enough that you have to be good, but you have to kind of have that reputation to keep getting rehired, right? It's not like other industries where, you just kind of get a job and, stay there forever. You have to kind of keep earning your keep and be on top of things. Was that ever a challenge for you guys to navigate, or was it just something like, just get used to it and it's what you do? Or do you ever get used to it, that aspect of having that as a career?
I think, I don't know if get used to it, but I mean, you kind of build a reputation. I think I was probably more nervous in the beginning. And like after you build kind of a reputation of being, good to work with, dependable, it's a small enough industry that people will recommend you for jobs, or people will seek you out, or like, hey, is this person good to work with? And then, somebody will, a lot of times I'm being hit up, hey, do you know anybody who's looking for work? And I'm like, oh yeah, this person or this person will be looking shortly. So, recommending and word of mouth goes a long way.
Sure. And Linnell, we can put this out there. Thank you. So LOL, yes. Thanks, Linnell.
Oh, real quick, if you don't mind me interjecting a little bit, I don't want to give I know a lot of people sometimes who are trying to break in the industry, they kind of make it. I know this wasn't part of the discussion, but I just want to kind of have a side thought. I don't want to give the impression to maybe some people that are new to the animation that are listening that it's kind of like also who you know. I mean, for sure, if you know a lot of people, and if I have friends in different studios, I can always call them up and ask, like, hey, are they starting anything? But I still, even if I have like the inside tip, I still need to kind of like show a portfolio and show, like, hey, am I good? I might have been good like 5 shows ago, but do I still got it? But also, I see a lot of new people, first timers that are they're just so talented that they get in right away because their work speaks for themselves, and they didn't really have to, know like the producer or the director. So it's a mix of both. I think if you're known and you have a reputation, you still need to be able to produce stuff that people like to see. And if you're a newcomer and you have an art style that people look at and they go, oh wow, look at this really talented person. Let's try them out. We can use them on the team. So yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, I think it's like networking isn't necessarily just schmoozing. It's like I feel like networking, there has to be a genuineness to it, that you actually are getting along with people, and I don't think anybody can just fake that, right? I mean, right. But what I kind of like to take it back to, I'd be curious to kind of ask artistically your influences that kind of got you, like what movies, what shows, which things got you excited that kind of inspired you to kind of take on this path, and like for Will, what about you? What was the things that kind of were like the landmark things, like, okay, I want to do this, that kind of inspired you to get involved?
Oh man, I feel like that's a really good question, first of all, and the answer of that depends on like how old I was at the time. So like if you asked me that question when I was like in high school, I'd be like, oh, it's this video game that I've been playing, or like this fighting game I was playing because they have really good sprites and cool action animation, and I've always really liked those stuff. But then if you ask me during college, I'll probably say like Ghibli, because I really love like the Japanese animation, the fidelity of the quality and the kind of care to the detail that they put in is so incredible, and the world is so immersive, and they express this fantasy world through something that don't actually exist, but through the filter of an art, of mind of an artist. And it's really cool that the craftsmanship it takes to bring something unreal into something that feels believable, to a point where you can almost smell the environment and the world that they reside in. And so, I think Ghibli is definitely one. Personally, I love Tech on Concrete, and I've always been a huge fan. And I love the world building of, just how intricate and how much sign there is, and the traces of people that live in this world. And it's almost telling a story about the everyday lives of the people in that world through, this dirt or like this graffiti of the city. And I've always been really intrigued by that. So animation for sure. And then, if you ask me today, I'd be like, Akira is awesome, because why not? Akira is always awesome. It's so timeless. So yeah, it really depends, and I think part of what's driving a lot of artists in the industry is hopefully that you keep finding new things to get excited about, so that you're not stuck with this one thing all the time. I think it's easy to get like tired and feeling a little, what's the word, burned out when this is speaking from my personal experience, but doing same thing over and over and over, it can get like, again, like burned out kind of feel. So it's always nice to shift things around, learn new things. And I don't know why I'm like talking about vices at this point, but just the point is, like, it's more about like changing it up that makes it more fun for myself, but also keeping the artistic journey fresh and worth a while.
I think that's what's good about our industry. It's not just animation. We're influenced by so many things that, you're inundated. I feel like you can be inspired just by looking, at video games or other animation that's happening. It's like, wow, that's amazing. Just the camera work, or I didn't think of that setup, or like Guillermo del Toro's the new Pinocchio. Even though that story's been told 1,000 times, you watch that and it's like, it's fresh, and it's the way it moves and everything. It's all inspiring, and it's like, yeah, I think we get inspired. Oh, I get inspired by so many different media now. It's easy. Just like, even though I may be stuck in something personally, I'm like, I can look over and like, oh yeah, that's why we're doing it. That's so cool.
Totally. Kind of confession time. That's kind of, I play video games with these guys online quite a bit. In fact, that's where I met Tim. I've known since I was, essentially a kid, but these two I met, as an adult, but virtually through video games. But part of the enjoyment is just listening to you guys talk shop, and just those little kernels of information where it's like, oh, did you see this thing? Oh, I like this. And then that leads into it. And it kind of bridges the gap between being sociable and talking shop. And you kind of don't know which one is, but it's fascinating, because I think to hear everybody's influences, for Tim, what about you? Like, what would you say were your influences, early on and throughout your career, or even like now? What?
Much the same as what Mike and Will says. Like with Will, it changes every, if you catch me at different times, I'll have different answers. And like Mike says, like, it's not only from other animation, it's from other, from video games, comic books too. I was talking to a friend about comic books once, and we're talking about how, like, has things gotten stale or not? And I don't think so. And the great thing about comic books, and of course, you guys know this, is like when you dive in and look at the indie scene, like, there's so much great unexpected takes on things, and that's a great source of inspiration too. But in the beginning, I would say, a lot of it was either like toy related, because I was a fan of certain toy lines, or it was like what anime I was watching at the time. And I was like a huge fan of like Gundam, but also Curtis, we were playing Street Fighter at the time in the arcades, and then the Street Fighter animated movie came out. We also watched Dragon Ball Z. I was always really cool. It was always really cool to see all the different stuff coming out of those properties. And I think the kid in me just got excited looking at it, and then thank goodness I can go to Little Tokyo and have access to like the art of books, so I can look at those books and get inspired more, and then go out and watch more. It's everything. It's comics, video games, anime.
Yeah, comics, I think, was huge for me when I was young, like growing up, reading the X-Men and John Byrne, then graduating to like manga and finding all kinds of manga that I loved. And it spans so many mediums.
Definitely. And
I gotta say,
go ahead, please.
I was gonna say something along the line of that. And as a student, I was like really into all these art stuff, and then as a student, I didn't have a lot of money. So then the $150 I get, I'm like, I'll buy this like groundworks of like Grand Lagan or something, my favorite show in 2008. Like reading it over and over and over, looking at how awesome the art is. And one of the things that I love about working in animation is that everybody collects books. So then I can walk into like Mike's office, and he's got like other Gynax, like Hooly Cooly art books, and I'm like, oh my god, where'd you get that? And then we kind of geek out about like some of the rare books, and then it's great because everybody has great animation books, but then you work in animation, so technically buying books is kind of like doing research for your own art, so you have a good reason to buy them. We all have pretty big collections of art books. It's definitely that's a fun part of being in animation, is you get to kind of collect books for work. And I mean, they're not always for work, but sometimes they can be for work, and it's you get best of both worlds.
No, totally.
And walking to everyone's cubicle, it's like walking into a little personal mini library. So if you go from cubicle to cubicle, you can like browse so much.
And you can tell what kind of shows they like, because everybody has like different kind of collections. Like some people are really into like Funko Pops, and others are more into like anime stuff, and some are more into Gundam, some are more into Disney. So many different genres.
That's kind of like checking out a buddy's comic book collections. Which ones went in the bag? Which ones stay on the shelf?
Yeah.
Which are just on the coffee table because they're halfway through it, or it sucks. I mean, it's
totally.
But there's one thing I was thinking about some of what you were saying, like the difference between like staying sharp, like constantly proving yourself, and then like those young animators that come in and they have like incredible natural talent. So it's kind of a question for all of you, but like that difference, what's that dividing line that you think that separates like those young guns that have the talent but they burn out, and then those young guns that eventually become the next old guard, or whatever term you want to use?
That's kind of tough, because there's a lot of people that are super talented, but it's like in any industry, it's like be super talented, but you kind of take it for granted and then kind of become unreliable. And then there's people that aren't as talented that work super hard and super diligently that become super talented and that will last, long, become the old guard. So it depends. It just depends on the mental attitude you have, I think, anyway. It's like not taking it for granted, and how you're I mean, as a lot of artists are introverts, and so social skills aren't always the best. I know in my younger days I was pretty quiet, but you learn those skills and you become reliable, and you open up and people get to know you. I don't know if I just went on a tangent.
No,
I think it's really hard to describe, because I think the story of each new young up and comer and each older veteran, I mean, they have each a different story, and it's kind of hard to encapsulate all of their journeys. But I'll try. But I think it's like there's a lot of people that when you're young, you also have a lot of energy and a lot of excitement over your new gig, and you're not as jaded as much. So you have a lot of energy. You'll spend more hours working it out. You're excited to get back to the desk and do it some more. And maybe you come up. And also another thing is like style wise. Maybe you came up in a time where certain styles were very popular in the industry, and you mesh well with those styles. And I feel like what could happen if you're not careful is you get locked in not being flexible. And as the industry shifts and different shows shift like their styles, and they want to try out different styles, or they've kind of moved on and done different things, you might, if you didn't practice or you weren't willing to draw in different styles and try new genres out, you might accidentally become one of the like outdated. Like even though you're still working hard and you are talented, people might go, well, you know, especially if you're a designer and you can only design in one style. Even though people would love to hire you, you might not be considered fit for the project. So that's one of those things. I feel like those that come in and they're willing to be, you know, like flexible and kind of like be able to adapt to whatever show they're on, they do really well. Yeah.
And I think what it comes to, oh, go ahead.
No. Oh, I was just going to say we had Brad Graber on before, you know, Powerhouse Animation, and he was talking about that there was this time when he first started that there were people who liked Japanese anime, and then there was the old guard that was like, that's crap, we don't like it.
Right.
And there became this shift where all of a sudden those guys got left in the dust because they didn't adapt and they couldn't appreciate something different. Yeah. So it's that kind of same idea. And sorry to interrupt, Will, but you were saying.
No, that's that kind of what he's touching on is like one example of like when that happened. That's a thing. What were you gonna say, Will? You were gonna say something?
Well, you guys touched on 2 points that I think is super important. One is reliability, as Mike said, and the other is adaptability, flexibility, like you said, Tim. They're both super important in my opinion. I think in animation, especially, it's first and foremost a team effort, and so it's very. Animation is a type of work where we collectively achieve something not single one of us can do ourselves alone. And there's something extremely satisfying about the final product when it comes out and you see the amount of work that comes in from every department. Like there's so much people involved in it that creates something so intricate and complex, you know, from the beginning to finish. It's quite, I mean, it's hard to see all of the people behind all the faces behind the final product. But I mean, just looking at before I started working animation, I never looked at the credits, I'm not going to lie. But then, you know, after working animation, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, these people are, you know, all parts of the process. And it really is a huge team effort. And because of that, it's all about collaboration. It's all about how you can fit in as a team and how reliable you are in this big collaborative process. And you know, a lot of it goes into like how easy you are to work with in, you know, both communication and personality, all that ends too. But also, yeah, like your work, like do they fit easily directly into the show? Is it applicable to the style of the show? And those are really important factors to consider during hiring too. And also, as Tim say, like animation change over time. Like storyboarding was done on paper and, you know, stick-it notes for a long time. And then it's shifted over to digital. And then, you know, people started adapting like 3D stuff in it. And, you know, then there's different programs that comes in to that too. And it's always changing. I think it does help quite a bit to be flexible in that regard. I definitely think in general, just speaking very generally in here, I think that would definitely help with the chances of working in a more different kinds of projects and, you know, potentially meeting more people.
Definitely. You know, I would be kind of curious just to hear, like one of the challenges I had when I was working in video games is this idea of keeping things at a high level and being professional. But when the person who's in charge, whether it's the art director or somebody else, you know, they want you put 100% and then they go, this is not what we're looking for. And you have to be able to just throw that away and start over and then still come back with that same amount of passion about what you're doing and be willing to just throw it away to do that. Is that a muscle that you train? Is it something that's just in you or not? How did you guys navigate that? Because for me, that was one of the hardest things about the collaborative effort. And I'd just be curious to hear your
I think some of that muscle gets trained, like even before you get in. Like if you were in comic books, and you got your portfolio rejected over and over, that's that you got thick skin right away, even before you got hired. But if not, like I think that first year or two in animation, you'll get it. You'll go, oh yeah, like Will says, it's a team effort, and you realize, it's not personal. Your director and producer, may like your drawing, but the scene you drew may not. It might be great, but not great for that moment. So you have to kind of like have a little bit of trust and go, well, he sees the bigger picture and he knows why it doesn't work. So if you're a professional, and this is kind of what Mike says about like being good in a team environment, you won't complain. You won't go, you'll be able to go, all right, well, what would you like me to do? And to get it closer to what we're looking for. And then you go back to your desk and do it. And then, but in your head, you're like, man, I thought I had it. I think that first year you develop that muscle.
Yeah, it's a fine line, because I think every artist has some sort of ego, but it's balancing that ego with humility and working together and trying not to take things personally. I mean, there's some situations where it is a personal thing, but a lot of times on productions, it's like we're trying to move in the same direction and trying to make things better. So it's trying to set aside that for the personal ego for something that maybe you don't see, that's not in your purview, like because you're in a certain department or you're doing a certain section, like that doesn't work over an overall story, or that doesn't work because of this, or that you're not seeing, and maybe it wasn't communicated properly or whatever. And just being able to not take things personally is a huge, I think, bonus for people working in the industry.
And if someone wonders, like, well, what happens if, like, I am good at what I'm doing, and I did turn in a really great, piece of art, and my supervisor still rejects it, and I'm like, like I said, it could be because it's just like stylistically, like, yeah, it is great, but like that's kind of like a personal taste, and you just kind of have to be cool with the fact that they want their vision, and it's not personal. It's just they're just kind of steering it toward a certain direction, and you gotta go, yeah, that's cool. Hey, I was going to ask, since this is the Comics Food Show, did you guys want to ask us like kung fu questions?
Yeah.
Sure. What's your favorite kung fu movie?
Yeah, there you go. Good one.
Well, Patrick, why don't you start? I want to hear. Yeah, you start with that one off.
Or what my favorite kung fu movie is?
Oh yeah.
Well, I tell you, I think it changes over time. Like when I was younger, right? I was really fond of, I'm kidding, but I think I would say the 5 Deadly Venoms when I was a kid. But there's another one whose name I don't quite recall. But Curtis, maybe you can help me out with this, right? It was A Tale of Revenge. The foe was Baimei, right? The white eyebrow, and the kid, his parents are dead, so he's teaching himself kung fu with like an acupuncture dummy.
Yeah.
And he's got to like throw the marbles, I think it was into the mouth, and they would go down the meridian points, and he'd have to pluck at them. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yes, Executioners from Shaolin. So
is that the one? All right, cool.
This is where I shine. This is my moment. This is my
so that one, burned pretty well into the memory. Just the fascination of like, what is the deal with that statue and the whole acupuncture points, right? But more recently, I would say like, House of Flying Daggers.
Oh, yeah?
Just, I get a little bit of a chill still with some of those scenes, like the dagger time, like just some of that was just so between those two, I think they capture a lot of my tastes.
Nice. Well, I have to give credit where credit's due, Adam, because Tim, for anybody knowing, is the reason that I do kung fu. He's the reason that I got into it. So I'll just quick anecdote was when we were at Malibu Comics, Tim was the one that would get laser discs and video cassettes, bootleg video cassettes and stuff from Hong Kong, and he got me into the Jet Li movies. and he got me into the Wong Fei-hung movies. And he also is the one that told me I should do martial arts with him. So it's his fault that everything happened.
My fault, yeah.
So shout out to Tim. He's the grandmaster before the grandmaster showed up in my life. So big hats off. But that being said, martial arts, I figured this, even more so than favorite movies. Michael, you just kind of rediscovered what was one of your favorite childhood ones, right?
Yeah, Drunken Master. I didn't know what the title was when I was a kid, and I just remember the scenes from it. I'm like, and then Google search after Google search. I'm like, finally, finally found it. But yeah, I've worked on Jackie Chan Adventures and Avatar and Turtles, and I watched religiously all those kung fu movies just for reference and inspiration, and Jackie Chan and just so many. I just rewatched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So good.
I was going to say that for my favorite one.
So good. And just you don't want to copy note for note, but you take inspiration from all that stuff. And working on Avatar, we filmed martial artists, people Sifu Kisu. We'd film him and Sifu Manny, doing specific moves, and it was an incredible, time just for reference. I mean, it was a lot of drawing, obviously. You can't just throw a punch. Everything's got more than 3 or 4 poses to get the footwork right or the hand poses right. But it's all influence and reference.
That's great. How about for yourself, William? You're saying Crouching Tiger?
I already said it. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. There's so many scenes in it that's amazing, but the one that really stuck out to me is that towards the end of the film, when the apprentice is holding onto the treasure sword, and she's fighting with her master, and the master has better technique, and you can tell through the choreograph, and she's always overpowering the apprentice, but she's got a better sword. So every time her weapon gets destroyed, and she keeps upgrading her weapon. And the way they show, how much better the weapon is. There's shots where the sword just literally cuts through an entire row of arrows, but the way the master handles it, she outperforms how good the sword is by her sheer skills, and it's visible through the choreograph. It's visible through the way they show the pacing and all that. It's just so incredible to watch, and it's really amazing filmmaking, and definitely extremely inspiring, and always loved it. Not just from action standpoint, but also set designs, and there's a lot of world building in it that feels extremely beautiful in its backgrounds.
Definitely. I never asked Tim outright. We watched so many of the same films, but Tim, what about you? What would stand out for you?
Well, I'm going to say some stuff, but you're like, we went and watched those together. But I'll dovetail off Michael Chang's selection because he said Drunken Master, but I'm going to say also Drunken Master 2, which is just gorgeous. The choreography there is great. Drunken Master 2, Fist of Legend, all the Once Upon a Time in China's, Legend of Fong Sayuk, Iron Monkey. Some great stuff. I think that era of 90s Hong Kong cinema was great. And then later on, when it kind of Hong Kong stopped producing as much anymore, you got some other people that kind of stepped in. So you got like Ung Bak or The Raid. All those things, I love those.
Linnell wants to add. He says Kung Fu Hustle Folios. Yes.
Kung Fu. Kung Fu Hustle. As far as the comedy Kung Fu stuff, Kung Fu Hustle. Shaolin Soccer is a dear favorite of mine.
That one broke my brain. I'm like, what is this? This is so incredible.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. Yeah.
Well, for CGI, I have to mention Storm Riders. Did you folks?
I remember Storm Riders. Yeah,
I forgot about that. You're right. Storm Riders was really cool at the time.
Yeah, as far as like that more like higher fantasy scale, you know, like where they're more super heroic. Yeah, that Storm Rider was fun. I mean, that whole genre of is cool. It's good stuff.
It's great at parties too. People are just like, I don't know what's going on, but look at those effects.
There's also those like guilty pleasure ones where they're like, yeah, they don't have really that deep of a story, but they're just nonstop action, like, you know, like In the Line of Duty 4, you know, or something. Yeah, there's these Hong Kong cop actioners that are just like, it's just like one fight after another, and it's good popcorn fun.
Definitely. And I was gonna say this for the end, but I think I should do it now before I forget. So Michael's on Instagram. His account is MC Animate, and he did this really cool series of Big Trouble in Little China illustrations. And it's like if you were pitching Big Trouble in Little China as an animated series, that's what it would look like. So you got to check it out because it's really awesome. It was really fun stuff.
Can I share my Big Trouble in Little China story? I've told Curtis this one a bunch of times now, but oh man, this is like maybe 1998 or something. And I got to meet James Hong, right? I was working at Kung Fu Magazine at the time, and he came to the studios for a couple of reasons. And he kind of noticed that, you know, I did my comic in the back of the magazine, and I had my art all over my workstation. And so we started talking, and he starts pitching me the idea of doing a Big Trouble in Little China comic. You know, not that he had the rights or anything, but he's like, let's just do it anyway, and then I'll get the rights. You know, and so we were batting it back and forth, and so he ultimately said, okay, well, if you want to do this, why don't you put me in the comic that you're doing right now, right? The tiger's tail that was appearing in the back of the magazine. So I got him into like one cameo appearance, just this crazy segue, cool. You know. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, there's James Hong looking at a crystal ball at my other characters, just to get him in there. And he loved it. The final thing was that he gave me a personal performance of one of his roles. He asked me like, what's your favorite role, right? And I picked Blade Runner, so he did the eye engineer lines to me. You know, I did your eyes. Blew me away. I was Roy Beatty for like a half a second. It was amazing.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
It's great that he pulled it out of his back pocket. That he, you know,
like that.
Wow.
It was like instantaneous. He's just like, what? Okay, you know, like, you know what you're gonna say to James Hong, right? You go, oh man, I loved you in this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, okay, well, which one's your favorite?
Yeah.
And as soon as you said it, his lines were like right there, like as if he had read the script that morning.
That's super cool of him. Yeah.
And so and now what? He's 91 years old. So happy birthday to James, still going strong.
Awesome. James is actually, I know it's been announced on our show on Secrets of the Mogwai. So he does a voice for us. Yeah, he's amazing to work with. We also did a little, you know, Easter egg shout out to Big Trouble in Little China in one of the episodes.
Oh yeah.
So it's all full circle.
That's glorious. That's glorious. Shout out to the elders, right? I mean, James is an institution.
Yeah.
Totally. Hey, if you guys don't mind me asking, just to kind of like toward the end here, kind of like tie it all together. Do you guys, William, Mike, do you have like a favorite scene that you worked on with martial arts, like a fight that when it came back and looked like oh yeah, I remember working on that. Like, what's one of your favorite fights from one of your shows? I guess with Mike would be if you boarded it or helped direct it, and with Will, like maybe you helped design like where it took place or the costumes or something.
For me, it was probably most influence would be on 2012 Turtles. There's a scene in a ramen bar where a fight takes place. I took a lot of inspiration from Jackie Chan and just kind of the comedic parts of the kung fu, where the turtles are fighting these henchmen, and the henchmen are way underpowered for the turtles, and the turtles aren't just kind of bored doing it and doing all kinds of silly stuff along with the kung fu.
That's awesome.
So that was a fun one.
That's awesome.
Cool.
And for me, There's a lot, but I think the one that comes to off the top of my head is one of the final episodes of season 3 of Korra, where I got to design like the crystal cave that anyways, the action scenes begins at inside the crystal cave, then it goes outside and Korra's in her avatar state, and the storyboards, like I think it was directed by Joaquin Dos Santos, who is like, he's so amazing. His action scenes are so badass. It was a collaborative effort of a lot of people, and the whole sequence was just like the crazy camera movements and 3D scenes by our compositors and the art department, the story department. They all come together, and there's so much. And my art director Brian had like he's allowed me to do this crazy detailed backgrounds. I'm like, are you sure I can put this much detail in the backgrounds? But you know, it gets painted over, so I think it's fine. But it was still really cool to, you know, see all that effort and work gets reflected. And yeah, at the end I was really proud of it, not just because I contributed in it, but also like I was like, wow, this is a really cool shot and it looks awesome. And yeah, it's again, collaboration is really cool, and I would never feel that way if I did, you know, just my part. So it's definitely a special feeling.
That's cool.
And how about you, Tim?
Go for it, Tim.
Oh, geez. It's weird. I asked a question. I didn't have one. I don't have an answer ready. I have a couple, but I think, you know, I think a lot of people think it's kind of like a silly matchup, but I think I had fun. There's a scene where Batman and Robin fight each other. It's kind of like part of the Court of Owls. It's in one of the directed videos. But Batman's going to go chase after Talon, and Damian doesn't want him to do it, and then they kind of like fight on this rooftop. And it starts off where like Batman can totally beat him, but he has to kind of like sort of like take it easy on him. But Damien's not taking it easy on Batman, and they have to kind of like one up each other. And there's a lot of there's a lot of like I put a lot of like what a lot of martial arts thinking into that duel. Yeah, so that was if anyone's ever watched that one, and you get to that scene, you'll know what I mean.
Definitely. So this is which Batman animated feature? Do you know?
That one, oh my god. You know, I get them all mixed up. Let me see.
Is that I recognize the Court of Owls.
The Son of the Demon one? Is that the one, or was that later?
It's just called Batman versus Robin. Maybe it might.
Is it that? Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's just Batman versus Robin. I was gonna say Batman Bad Blood, which I worked on too, but no, I think it's just Batman versus Robin. Yeah, I think that's Batman versus Robin.
All right, that's going on the big screen tonight.
I've done actually a lot of Batman stuff. There's another one I have fun with, where way longer, where during the Batman, where Batman has to fight a bunch of vampires. I think it's Batman versus Dracula, and at the end, he goes into this in Dracula's lair, and he's got a lot of these vials strapped to him that have like the cure for vampirism, and he has to fight all these other vampires that Dracula has made from Gotham, and he's just like as he's fighting, he's refilling his vials and injecting each of the vampires he's fighting with the serum. That was fun too.
That's cool. That's awesome. I still remember Tim, you know, because Tim and I are good friends. So, you know, go over to his place, and I could, you know, sometimes I get a glance at some of the stuff that he's working on. And one of the funniest ones I thought was, I think it was an episode of Ben 10 you were working on.
Okay.
And there was some fight scene where it was like somebody got possessed by an alien or something, and it was just some guy in a parking lot. And so the fight scene starts, and then all of a sudden the guy jumps up to the roof of the parking lot, and he kind of like bounces off the wall, and he does the M. Bison like Psycho Crusher from Street Fighter. And it was just like so, and it was like somebody that just looked like somebody from Central Casting, you know, that was just like this random guy, you know.
Right.
It was just really, really funny. I still remember that. But
well, you remember that. I don't remember that.
Oh yeah.
My God, I've boarded so many fights. I've forgotten a lot of them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. But No, definitely. I mean, this is really fun. You know what? You know, one kind of, we're winding down. If you guys could, I know Tim has a hard out soon, but if we just a couple more, just
I'm okay for now. Yeah.
yeah. One thing I'd just be curious is, so we kind of talked about the entry into the industry and doing stuff like that, but all of you are kind of at or at times in positions where you are in the leadership or in a kind of a supervisory position. What I would be curious of is, one, is that anything like a track that you knew of that somebody says, okay, if you do this job, this job, this job, in this amount of time you'll get there? Is it that clear cut? And then the second part would be, what is it not like now being on that side of things? We were talking about earlier when you're coming up and you have to show something to somebody, and if they don't like it, being the person with that decision making, having people under you, balancing that. Like, I'd just be kind of curious about what that experience is like. So.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a hard fast track to anything. There's no set time period for you go from this to this to this to this. But there's a general track, like this is a way you can go. Sometimes you can bypass certain things, or maybe it takes you less time than another person, or much longer for another person. But moving up the ranks, I think for me, I learned so much more about my previous job while I'm in the higher job.
Really?
Because you see things, I see a bigger purview, like from storyboard, like going from storyboard to director. As a storyboard artist, you're concentrated on this just one section. Whereas a director, you have to find the balance for all the sections. And you go behind the scenes and you see what goes into the writing, into the timing, into the editing. So it's more, and that if you go back to storyboarding, you have that knowledge while you're storyboarding. But while you're storyboarding, you don't know any of that. You're not concentrating on that. So you learn more about the craft lower. If that makes sense.
That's interesting.
It's like, oh, if I go back to storyboarding, I'll think of these other things, like timing and music and editing and all that stuff. Like,
wow, that's cool.
And it's the same way. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's the same way for art departments too. Like, having been a designer for many years in my career, I think, in that position, the most important thing is to make sure whatever you're designing if it was environment, then that is the most, cool thing you can think of. And, that's, when it comes there's more complexity to it, but when it comes down to, is it cool, right? Like, that's the most important thing. I think a lot of people, like exactly what Mike said, it really depends. Like, there's no easy track or fast track to leadership roles. I think a lot of it, is circumstantial, and it's different for everybody. I will say that, having been on this side, I agree. I totally agree with Mike. There's so much more variables behind the matrix that's happening, outside of just like making sure something looks extremely cool and pretty and all that stuff. And there's a lot of things like schedules and budgets and managing a team and how the dynamics of the team works with each other. That is very hard to do, and it's given me a lot of newfound appreciation for a lot of the leaders I've had an opportunity to work with. And honestly, I'm still like learning that aspect of it myself. And I feel like when you become those leadership roles, you get to that leadership role because you were good at like this one job. And then when you get to it, you don't get to do that job as much, and you get to do like more, logistic, figuring out the team stuff. And so it's like, it's a different game you're playing, or it's not really a game, but a different skill sets. And it's definitely fun, but also, it's not the same. And take that as you will, but it's cool either ways, but it's very different dynamics wise.
Sure. Sounds like kind of like coaching the team instead of being on the field, playing the game a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
How about for you, Tim?
I mean, yeah, I agree with the guys. I think the only thing I can add is like, just maybe expand on the whole, perspective thing that Mike brought up. Like when you're a storyboard artist and you're on a team, you've been assigned a certain section of the script. And a lot of times what happens when you're new, you just kind of want to show how awesome you are at that. So you might be working on a scene on the first act of the show, and you go, well, I want to kind of show off and flex. So you'll make, like the bad guy fight and the fight with the good guy, like super spectacular and over the top and awesome. But then like the director, he knows what like the buildup is going to be, and he might come in and tell you that, well, we kind of don't want all the cool things, like we don't want like the act 1 fight to outshine the final confrontation at the end of act 3. So I mean, make it cool, but don't like, that's just a quick encounter when he first encounters the bad guy. It's not meant to be the final fight. So it's just meant for him to kind of, the good guy to take notice, not for them to be, to be as deeply emotional as the final fight they're going to have later. But then, the storyboard artist is like, oh man, but I made it really, really cool. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't fit. Like if you're going to watch the whole show, it doesn't fit in that. To the focus doesn't fit for that moment in time. And what Mike is saying is like, because as the director, you're talking to the producer and the head writer, and they have certain expectations as to like how the audience is going to sort of interact with the episode and when the emotions are going to rise and fall. And it kind of needs to make that, to match that. And sometimes you can get so focused on just what you're doing, you forget that, you got to kind of like, you probably read the script once when you first sat down, but then kind of just only read your scene again and kind of forgot that your buddy's working on the final fight and he's doing something different. Same thing goes for like, if you're a designer, you might need to design something. You might be told to design something, you put a lot of hard work into it, but later on when you're a supervisor, you can tell the guy that is going to design that room, like, hey, look, that room is going to be, that's a closet and it's going to be on screen for like 4 seconds. You know what, you don't need to spend a lot of time on that one, go to the next, make sure you're spending all the time on the other thing instead, because he sees the bigger picture. And I'm kind of oversimplifying it a little bit, but like that's kind of like an example of like how, being able to see it when you're in the leadership position, you can see
the importance of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's part of the team dynamics, as because somebody does need to make sure that everyone's kind of working under the same direction and in the same way. But then we also need people who's actually, their entire focus to make sure that it looks as good as it can, and it excites the audience, and it really is. You can't really do without each key elements, and everybody's equally just as important in this process.
Yeah, I think you're talking about like having a better appreciation for the people we work for after having in the role. Yeah, like looking back on some of the directors, art directors, producers, and directors I've worked with, the ones that when they did give me a section to work with, they gave me context and they helped guide me through. And they kind of like, hey, look, when you do this, keep in mind that this moment you're doing is supposed to key into this thing later. They didn't just go, here, do page 6 through 6 to 12, go, and then not. And there's some people that unfortunately work on that, work like that. But the good ones, they help everyone see which part they're playing really well. And thankfully, I work with a lot of good people like that. So
that's awesome. Well, good. Well, I think as we wind down, I think that was awesome. It's always great to talk shop with you guys, and it's great to have Patrick here to with me to
kung fu wisdom across the board, man.
Right. And you always hear the same things. It's like everything they say is like, whether we're talking martial arts or comic books, it's always the same stuff keeps coming up. Like we were talking about the other night about martial arts. It's like the worst students I ever had were the most talented ones, because it was too easy for them. They lost interest. It was the students that were good but needed to get polished that actually became better martial artists. And it sounds like it's the same lot of ways with art too. So, but yeah, well, I guess if I know everybody's kind of working on their individual things, and of course, the way the industry is, you can't necessarily give too much detail. But if there's anything you want to let people know that's coming down the pipeline, I know we have 2 of your Instagram, information here. But does anybody have anything they want to add as we close out, or mention or plug, basically? So
Hopefully,
Support Curtis.
huh?
There's a cool comic book coming out.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I'm on it, boss.
two comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was trying to get a sponsorship for us for this episode from Mitsuya Marketplace. Unofficially,
Unofficially, Will's second home.
yes, unofficially, we
Will
recognize.
wants to plug the Mitsuya Marketplace.
Unofficially, we endorse the Comics Fu Show endorses Mitsuya Marketplace. So just throwing it out there, Mitsuya. You need the sponsorship, so let us know. But that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and throw up. Unless Patrick has anything else you want to add, you're good.
I'm just marinating in all of this wisdom. It's been a real pleasure to listen to what you guys had to say individually, but also just enjoy the camaraderie. It was a special thing. It was a great time. So thanks for being a part of it.
Hey,
Thanks for
having us on. And now that I got to check out your stuff, I'm looking forward to Tiger's Tail as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And so you can find Michael's work on Instagram, MC Animate. Like I was mentioning, really clever Big Trouble in Little China art that he did recently. So please check that out. Yeah. And for Tim always, if you know Tim has the best usernames around. So Tim's username on Instagram, Gelatinous Cube. You will see some amazing art and some Warhammer 40K related things, Dungeons and Dragons related stuff. Great art. So check out Tim there. And that's pretty much it. So what we're going to do is we're going to end by we'll play our kind of end credits / trailers at the end. And then we're going to give a special announcement after, right, Patrick? Is that when we're giving about our
Marvel Studio style?
Yeah, we'll have our post-credit sequence. You guys are free to stay. We're going to put you in the background if you have to head out. I'll see you on PlayStation, hopefully tonight. And we'll see if I can stay awake. And we'll call it. Thank you so much, guys. Awesome. Great to see you guys.
Thanks
so much, guys.
All right. Everybody take care. We'll see you next time. As a kid, I loved Kung Fu movies. So I went to Chinatown, trained with a wise teacher, and became a Kung Fu master. Sounds simple, right? Not really. My journey, like the study of Kung Fu, was as arduous as it was rewarding, filled with as many secrets as revelations and as much heartache as triumph. It's a defining moment in my life, and while I began studying Kung Fu to learn how to fight, what I discovered was a way to live. Martial arts never came easy to me. I was far from talented, and even farther from being the chosen one. It was only through years of tenacious perseverance that I was able to make steady progress. And so, I was surprised when my master told me that I should teach Kung Fu and share the art outside of Chinatown. I did just that and taught Kung Fu to my own students for 20 years. I always wanted to do more to share the art of Kung Fu with others, but was limited by only being able to teach those within my immediate area. What about the rest of the world? Then one day, I had one of the deepest insights about Kung Fu. I realized that the punches, kicks, throws, and myriad of martial maneuvers are merely the delivery system for the true essence of Kung Fu, the philosophy and way of life. Having worked for years as a professional artist and storyteller in film, animation, video games, and comic books, I realized that I could draw upon this unique skill set to share my passion for Kung Fu with the greater world. And so I created Shadow Ghost, a Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. The first issue was created entirely by myself, from story and art to colors and lettering. Every panel is filled with unprecedented accuracy in its depiction of Kung Fu by a comic book creator who knows from first-hand experience what it means to be a Kung Fu master. Shadow Ghost is a martial arts coming-of-age story about a young man whose search for the truth about a legendary hero leads him to study Kung Fu, and through a twist of fate, becomes part of the legend himself. For the first time in comic book history, you can immerse yourself further in each issue with Kung Fu Skills technology, powered by Tiger Crane Kung Fu. Scan the QR code at the back of the comic and follow an exclusive link to an online instructional video where I teach you Kung Fu techniques featured in the series. With Kung Fu Skills technology, you can do more than just read about the Shadoko Saga. You can become a part of it. The first issue is completely finished and ready for print. All that's needed is for you to make a pledge of support so that we can fund the printing of the first issue. Together, we can share the wisdom of Kung Fu with the greater world. Shadow Ghost is the story of Kung Fu. It's about the people, the art, the culture, and the philosophy. It's my story and the story of those that I've learned from, taught, fought, and loved. Join me and become part of the vibrant legacy in a place and time where we might not be the chosen one, but where we can make a choice to be part of something bigger and greater than just ourselves. I'm Sifu Curtis Fujita, and this is Shadow Ghost, the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master.
Hi, I'm Plugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and the art director for Kung Fu Magazine for more than 20 years. But I'm here to talk to you about a project that's really special to me. It's the middle grade graphic novel, A Tiger's Tale. Imagine the story of tigers and dragons and martial artists and monsters. So when I launched the campaign for A Tiger's Tale Volume 1, I did not know what to expect. But it succeeded thanks to a group of passionate backers. It was also awarded the Make More Comics art grant that year and was later featured as part of an art gallery exhibit. And that's why I'm coming to Kickstarter, to cover production fees, printing, copy editing, things like that. Books completed, with the exception of a few pages I've set aside for color over the course of the campaign. This turned out to be a popular feature of Volume 1's campaign, so I thought I'd bring it back for Volume 2. I think it's going to be great fun for everyone. Hope you'll support the campaign. I'm very excited about it. Thanks for stopping by.
And we're back with a
that was awesome.
It was awesome, right? Are they just the coolest? They're just the nicest, coolest guys, you know?
Oh man, it was just so like the little like so much information in some of their phrases, just like how the way they would just like say something like just Tim's not unwillingness to generalize and just say specific things. And it's like, oh, that's so much experience right in that choice.
Oh, totally, totally. And I think, you know, with that being said, and wrapping up that episode, I think we have a very special announcement about another amazing artist, a very amazing artist and guest that we will be airing tomorrow. We just spoiler, we recorded it because we had to do it. This person lives in Europe, so time zones. But Patrick, I think you hooked it up, so I think you gotta be the one to.
Are you gonna trust me to press the button, Curtis?
I trust you to press the button. I know you can do. You got this. You got.
Finally, I'll get it this time. Boom.
Yes. Say it. It's all you.
comic creator, well, concept artist for such films as The Matrix and their various sequels, and the creator of the Shaolin Cow. Oh wait.
I'm trying to point that.
All right, so yeah,
Right
comic
here.
artist. Concept artist. No, man, I can't do this. Wait, no.
Other way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
concept artist for The Matrix, comic book artist and writer creator for the Shaolin Cowboy.
Yes.
This dude is like a hero to
Yes.
me as an artist,
Yes.
and just a prolific creator and a genuine, gentleman. So,
And a big fan of Kung Fu. We had a massive conversation with him over about an hour and 40 minutes and some change. So again, we'll be airing that tomorrow, but we're talking the one, the only Jeff Darrow tomorrow. So please keep an eye out. What time are we thinking? We're thinking around, what time are we thinking about airing that?
did we say 11 a.m.?
Yeah.
Is that something like that?
11 a.m. Jeff Darrow, and you will freak out when you hear this interview. And he gives us some really cool behind the scenes stuff about The Matrix, including some actors that you wouldn't believe were going to have the role of Neo before Keanu Reeves.
I know, who could have been the one, but weren't, right?
Yeah, and two of them, it'll flip you out. So Jeff Darrow tomorrow, 11 a.m. You can find us YouTube, Facebook, all over the place. And don't forget to check out our campaigns, Tiger's Tail on Kickstarter.
There you go.
There you go.
Boom. I'll also have the stream will be available there for anyone who wants to check it out there. But
Yes, definitely check it out there.
And then alternatively,
it's actually just look up Shadow Ghost and you'll find it. It's a little easier on Kickstarter. But
you find one of us, you'll find the other,
Definitely.
But definitely look for us tomorrow so you can get a taste of what we've been working towards. And
Definitely.
it's been the chance to talk comics and Kung Fu and The Matrix.
And The Matrix with Jeff Darrow tomorrow. So we'll see you folks then. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll catch you guys next time. See ya.